Dr. Irene, pardon. Dr. Aini Marina proudly serves University Putra, Malaysia as a senior lecturer in educational psychology in the Department of Foundations of Education at the Faculty of Educational Studies. A UPM alumna, she was a recipient of UPM's Best Overall Graduate Award upon completion of her bachelor's degree in TESOL in 2008. She received her graduate training from Master of Science to postdoctorate at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, USA in the area of cognitive sciences of teaching and learning. Dr. Marina's teaching areas cover educational psychology, applied cognitive psychology, problem solving and decision making, thinking and reasoning, thinking skills, research methods, psychology of attitude formation and attitude change, classroom interaction, and academic reading. She is an international trainer who actively trains other lecturers and educators, especially on the use of pedagogical, sorry if I pronounce it wrong.
Pedagogical, yes.
Pedagogical tools for digital natives. She has also served as the university's MOOC manager, who has trained other lecturers to develop and deliver numerous online courses. Also, she has participated and won numerous teaching innovation competitions and served as juries in both national and international level teaching and learning innovation competitions. In 2018, she won the University Vice Chancellor Fellowship Award in teaching under the Young Lecturer category. Her primary research interests are in the field of learning sciences and cognitive performance across the lifespan. And specifically, she develops and evaluates numerous educational interventions aimed at improving executive functioning skills to improve learning processes and outcomes of learners from various backgrounds. She is also an educational consultant and writer for numerous agencies, including UNESCO and Talent Corp. Well, before we proceed further, I would like to highlight on the participation guidelines during the delivery of the seminar. For technical and quality purposes, firstly, your microphone has been muted to avoid any distractions. Only the speaker will be able to use the microphone. For record purposes, secondly, please fill in the confirmation of the attendance form provided in the chat space on the right bottom of your screen. It is compulsory to record your attendance. And thirdly, if you have any questions, please type it out in the chat space, as I have mentioned before. And in the case that all participants' questions cannot be answered during the seminar, the speaker and the moderator will make sure to answer the remaining questions via email. And lastly, there will be a 5 minutes break after the presentation to gather your written questions for the speaker. All right, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Aini Marina for her presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Chairperson, for the lovely introduction. I'm actually using two devices here. So one is kind of like my iPad and the other one's like where I'm sharing my screen. All right, so that's why it's kind of like here and there. Okay, so in the event that you cannot hear the audio, please let me know. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to share my screen and see what happens here. Okay. All righty, so I think it's kind of clear, yes? Okay, so we have about 2 hours together, and that is not a lot of time, right? So as we admit new participants coming in, I think we can sort of proceed with today's sharing session. Thank you so much to those of you who actually took the time out of your busy schedules, you know, to make time to come to this training session today, right? It's still the exam week. And I'm quite sure that there's a lot of pending work still, right? I will try and make sure that I'm not wasting my time and your time in the next 2 hours. All right, so today I was actually given a title. It's actually a very simple title by SDS, Articulation and Presentation Skills. But it's something that time and time again, that as graduate students, we cannot run away from not only presentations, but the pinnacle of your journey is to actually ace in the Viva Voce, right? In the final defense. So there have been cases, in fact, there have been numerous cases, especially during Viva, right, where the written report of the examiner's written report is that you got a major correction. But because of good articulation skills, good presentation skills, you were able to make the committee members understand your presentation well, follow your presentation well. You were actually able to engage them. You were actually able to grasp their attention, and you were actually able to retain their memory about what you were actually presenting. So from major, sometimes, you can actually reverse that, or you can actually change that that Viva verdict to minor modification. So there have been cases like that. And recently, there have been also cases where can the moderator do a sound check to make sure that everyone is muted? Yeah. All right. So there has also been recently a case where the student actually received a minor modification for her Viva report for her master's thesis, right? But during the oral presentation, during the Viva itself, the person somehow was not able to articulate her ideas well. She seemed lackluster. She wasn't even sure what she was doing. She wasn't even sure what she was actually writing, and she wasn't even sure what's in the slides to begin with. So from a minor result, she was almost left with a resubmission, and resubmission is actually almost pretty much failing the Viva. Right, so these things is actually why, even though as trifling as it sounds, like articulation, presentation skills, this is why it's actually really important. And in fact, it's part and parcel for a graduate student to actually master the art of articulating ideas well. Because in the grand scheme of things, even after you graduate, when you get into the real workplace scenario, right? You cannot run away from giving presentations, doing pitching, and so on. So if you do not master this basic communication skills, you will somehow lose a lot in life, and a lot of the opportunities when as opposed to other people who are actually able to pitch well. So I come from the School of Education. I come from the Faculty of Education, and part of my job is to actually train teachers, right? So I always tell my students that if you are not able to simplify things, if you are actually not able to boil things down, complex things, and simplify things, make sure that your students actually pay attention to you. Make sure that your students actually understand what you're talking about, right? If you do not have those skills, then you might as well not become a teacher in the first place. So same goes to lectures, and same goes to graduate students. If you are actually not able to translate all the complex, all the complicated research, sophisticated research that you do, right? If you're not able to boil that down into simple, relatable information, then you cannot reach far, right? The whole point of doing research is actually to communicate those findings to people, so that the people who may find it significant can actually make use of those new knowledge that you have produced, right? So without further ado, let me go ahead and wait, my screen is stuck. Let me go ahead and share the goal, the mission for today, right? So we're pretty much going to explore the role and importance of effective articulation and presentation skills in academia, meaning that in university and career development. And we'd like to look at key components of successful articulation and persuasive speaking, right? part of a good presentation is actually to be able to pitch well, to make people retain their attention and understand and listen and take action of the information that they receive from you, right? And then number 3, to uncover practical tools and techniques for creating engaging and impactful presentations, right? And lastly, to address the unique challenges and opportunities non-native English speakers like all of us, most of us here today, right, encounter in presentation settings. Now, what this training is not covering today is pretty much me not actually going to teach you like how exactly to create a PowerPoint, how exactly to operate those tools. That calls for a separate seminar, but we do have all those lists of tools that you can actually use. All right, so we're going to focus more on somewhat the psychology of what makes a presentation good. All right, so moving on, right? Why focus on articulation and presentation skills, right? Again, to effectively convey research ideas and findings. It is very useless, I would say, right? It is very pointless if your years and years of your hard work during doing the master's, doing the PhD, but especially during Viva, you were not able to convey those meaningful findings, those important findings effectively during the Viva Voce, and you were not able to effectively communicate those ideas in your thesis, right? So communicating your findings effectively is very, very important. It's part and parcel of actually doing the master's and the PhD in the first place, right? And then number 2, create persuasive arguments and presentation. Again, the whole point of communicating is to actually exchange information with each other, is to actually make each other understand each other, right? So part of that process is being able to be persuasive. And this is something that's lacking in most of our graduate students, all right? And then number 3, build professional credibility and positive impressions. A good speaker, right? A good communicator can actually make people, they would have like a very positive image, a positive perception about you, as opposed to someone who's done a lot of complicated work, a lot of sophisticated statistical analyses and so on. But let's say during the Viva, you're slouching and you look lackluster, and you're not even having eye contact with the people that you're presenting to, especially the examiners. So that then creates this impression to the examiners that, should I actually, trust this person? Is this person credible? So sometimes a good presentation, a good, good communication skills will actually somehow mask the deficiencies in the written theses. I've seen this time and time again. Right, and I've also seen poor presentation skills, poor articulation skills, overruling good, finely written theses. So this is why it's really important, all right? And then, of course, for promoting successful networking, job talks, and conference presentations, because, presentations do not end at the university. Presentations do not end when you have acquired your master's and PhD. It's really part and parcel of whatever jobs or whatever careers that you will delve into. There's going to be a lot of pitching, there's going to be a lot of presentations, a lot of reports to deliver and so on. So it cuts across your entire career. All right, now what we're going to do today is that, we are going to use Padlet, all right? As old school as it sounds, it's still a useful tool as a parking lot. So feel free to use your mobile devices to scan this, or, you can also open a new tab on your laptop if you're using your laptop. So I have a lot of the training materials posted in here, and we will be doing activities as we go along the way. So, when we talk about communication, articulation, and things like that, it's best that, we put these things into practice right away. So it's not more of theory, but more of just like bite-sized information for you to remember enough to use in your future presentation preparations. All right, so let's go ahead and head over to Padlet and make sure that you have that Padlet tab open throughout the session, okay? All right, so let's begin by breaking the ice. I don't exactly have your faces in front of me right now because my screen is on full presentation mode, but I think there's about like 50 of us in here. So let's introduce ourselves and share one memorable presentation you've given or watched and what made it memorable. All right. And it could be something that went really well or something that didn't go as planned, but from which you learned something valuable. So let's go ahead and head over to Padlet, all right, and see what you have to say in there. All right, so let me go ahead and share the Padlet screen. So this is what, if you are able to get in here, all right, this is what the Padlet, the Padlet page looks like. So head over to the second column, all right, and then you will see this column, let's break the ice, okay? So if you're not familiar with Padlet, actually you don't really have to sign in to post anything in here. So all you have to do is go to the second column. Hello, I'm Beyonce, who are you? All right, so let's break the ice here and try and share or try and recall a memorable presentation, all right? Whether you've given that presentation or you've watched that presentation, but why does it stick in your head until today? Is it something that you really like? Is it something that's inspirational? Or was it so bad? Was it something that you actually did that you're proud of yourself? And why were you proud of yourself? Or was it something that's bad that, it became a core memory that you cannot forget about it? So in 2 or 3 sentences, go ahead and click onto the add comment here, right? You can see the add comment. You can add your responses there. So I'll give you about like 2-3 minutes to work on this. I'm not exactly sure why there's kind of like a rectangle in our screen here. Can you all actually get into the Padlet? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Ching. So I can see like a post from Ching from the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, right? FPSK. So Ching has presented her thesis, right, during the Asia Pacific Primary Care Research Conference and won 3rd prize. Congratulations. This is very encouraging for my Viva. That is absolutely right. To all you graduate students, I would want you to be aware that, like, all these conferences and there's a lot of sometimes innovation competitions and so on. If that is your line of work, right? Feel free to actually participate in those things, and then feel free to actually include those somewhat small wins, in your Viva slides, because that will somehow add credibility to your to the work that you're presenting. So if you have not yet published something, and you're not able to include that in your Viva slides, this work was published somewhere, you haven't gotten to that stage yet, right? So but if you have actually went into conferences and presented it, or you've actually won in innovation competitions, even though it's actually just at the faculty level or the department level, those things, trust me, they will add credibility to your work. And again, at the end of the day, examiners are humans, and when you can actually appeal to their emotion side, the Viva results will almost always be in your favor. So again, like I told you earlier on, a minor result can turn into a resubmission, a major result can turn into a minor, and so on, just because of the oral Viva, right? Anyone else wants to share? Like there's so many of you, and only Ching wants to share. Hi, Dr. Marina. I'm learning a lot from your presentation. We're only 15 minutes into the talk, and we haven't gotten anywhere, but thank you so much. Anyway, feel free to actually share your experiences and so on in the second column. So let us move on to the next section. All right. I'm going to actually keep this Padlet for all of you to access even after the training is over. All right. So this is kind of like our small parking lot space where we can build materials as we go along, and we can actually even share things in here. Okay, for your later reference. All right, so let's move on. You guys can actually continue commenting on that section, but I will move on and then I'll come back to the comments as they trickle in. All right, okay, let's move on. Where's my slides again? Okay, here's my slides. I'm gonna go back to here. Okay, so this is the first section of the session, talking about clear articulation. All right, so the whole idea here is that if you guys have not, if you guys are not aware of this already, being able to communicate is actually being able to make your thoughts clear and understandable, right? So how do you actually convey clear articulation? So number one is actually clarity of thought. What does clarity of thought means? Clarity means clear. Your thoughts needs to be clear. So if you look at your class presentation sometimes, right? If you look at your slides and so on, you will see that even your head is actually messy. And most of the time, you don't have clarity of thought because you don't understand the material enough. And sometimes you are not even able to convey things clearly because you don't even know your work enough. Like your research, you don't even understand it well. You don't even master it well for you to be able to clarify it well, or, deliver it well. So number one, the number one pillar to a clear articulation is the clear of thought, which means that you need to have a well-organized idea of what you want to communicate, and you can only have a well-organized idea if you really truly understand the subject matter that you're going to deliver, right? So oftentimes, in my graduate class, I actually teach a master's by coursework program, right? Masters of Education in Education Psychology. So we have a lot of courseworks, and we have a lot of international students, and some of them are actually struggling with English. So I teach a very abstract, dry subject called cognitive psychology. So the experiments are actually about your brain, but it's done using a computer. And even if you split open the brain, you can't see your thought processes, but it's there, so all these weird experiments about the mental processes and all these weird terms and so on. So most of the time, my students actually struggle to understand the material first. So when they actually present in class, they don't even understand what they're presenting in class, right? So when you do not have clarity of thought, your ideas become fuzzy, and that's why your presentation becomes messy, because you don't have a clear plan of what you want to talk, because you don't understand, right? So I always tell my students, because my students are, at the bachelor's level, they are teacher trainees. So I always tell them these pre-service teachers, right? And also my graduate students as well. So I always tell them that if you want to be a good teacher, you need to be able to simplify complex materials. And only when you are able to simplify complex or sophisticated materials can you be able to teach people, other people better. And the only way for you to be able to simplify complex material is by understanding or mastering that material in the first place. So the bottom line here, guys, is that if you have mastered a content, right, you are actually able to really make it simple for other people. If when you explain to someone and you cannot explain it in a very simple way, it means that you might not have mastered the presentation well, right? So that's number one. Clarity of thought is very important. And number two, it relates with that clarity of thought. When your thoughts are clear, you will then somehow use simple language. I could have actually opted to actually deliver this training from the perspective of cognitive science, like how the brain works and why you're not supposed to do this during presentation, why you're not supposed to put all these things in your presentation slides and so on. I could have taken that route, but I'm going to lose you guys. I'm going to lose your attention and engagement and so on. So I'm just wasting my time and wasting your time, right? So again, you need to boil things down into simple language. Have you guys heard of the 3-minute thesis competition organized by the School of Graduate Studies, right? That competition is actually a competition initiated by, if I'm not mistaken, from Australia, because oftentimes they realize that people are doing all these important work, but beyond the supervisory committee, beyond the department, and beyond the examination committee, people don't understand what you're doing, but it's important, right? So that's why they have this 3-minute thesis, where you summarize your entire life's work of that from that thesis into just 3 minutes. It's a 3 minutes presentation from beginning to end, telling people what you're doing and telling it in a persuasive, engaging storytelling manner, right? You're telling a story about your thesis, even though it's actually in physics, about fishes and things like that, so a good presentation is where you can actually really boil things down into a simple story. So simplicity of language, clear, straightforward language to make sure that your audience can follow your thoughts. All right. And then number 3 is the power of storytelling. So stories capture attention and make information more memorable. Now, if you look at religious scriptures, right, the Bible, the Quran, and so on, right, you will see that most of these religious scriptures, and if you are a God-believing person, you will believe that these scriptures are actually from your divine Lord, right? So sometimes, as a learning scientist, I always wonder, what is the pedagogical stance of the Quran, for example? What is the pedagogical stance of the Bible, for example? And time again, you will realize that I'm a Muslim, so I can only cite from what I understand of the Quran, right? So in the Quran itself, I think it's more than 50% of the contents in the Quran is actually delivered through storytelling. There's a story of this prophet, that prophet, what happened to this group of people, what happened to that group of people. For some reason, human beings are actually wired, right, to remember stories. And that's why we like to gossip and so on, because we somehow remember seductive details better. So leverage on the power of storytelling, because that's how the human brain works. It is, it is wired to actually understand and follow stories better. So stories actually capture attention and make information more memorable. So if you can actually, turn your thesis, as abstract as it sounds, as full of statistics as it sounds, like, well, I'm doing something on data mining, like what story do I need to tell? Of course, data actually tells a story, and if you can actually tell a story about what your data is telling a story, and that will be magnificent, right? So again, most of the time, I've been in this job for quite a while now, to actually come to the conclusion that a lot of the presentations made by graduate students and in fact by lecturers, right, it lacks the power of storytelling, right? And then number 4 is appropriate pacing. And this is the one that I've been struggling as well, because my mouth is actually faster than my brain. So when I'm so excited, like right now, I tend to talk very fast, not realizing that a lot of the people in front of me will have different levels of English competency, proficiency, and so on. Or maybe, when I'm talking about psychology and people are actually not from psychology and so on. So when you get excited, you tend to talk very fast, and you will lose the audience as well. And there will be people who are just, like, I don't give a damn about this presentation. I just want to get done with this. So you're lackluster and you talk very slow and you talk very monotonous, right? That's when you will also lose your audience. And the moment you lose your audience, like I said, you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're wasting everybody's time. The whole thing becomes pointless, right? Okay, moving on. I'm still not sure why, like in my iPad, it has all these black panes that's covering a bit of the screen, but I hope it's not covering any text in your screens, all right? So these are the 3 people that you can look up on Google, right? Effective articulation in action. These are the real life examples. One is Steve Jobs. I think some of you are old enough to know him, right? He's the CEO of Apple, the late Steve Jobs. He's passed away due to cancer, right? So he is well known to have clear and compelling style, and he likes to begin his presentations with a narrative. And like how, if you've been following the Apple journey, they've hit rock bottom and then they hit rock bottom again, right? Until they release their iPhones and so on. So that was when, they actually followed Steve Jobs and how he was actually able to rebuild his brand. And they realized that part of the success is actually due to his compelling pitching style. So they have analyzed people in communications, right? They have analyzed that he has a clear and compelling style, and he normally begins his presentation with stories, right? And then number 2, he uses simple language to explain complex concepts, it's like high-tech stuff and so on, especially back in the days in 2006 and 2007 when he first wanted to introduce the iPhone 3, right? But he tried to make things very simple, and that is also evident in all of the Apple products as well, right? And the other thing is that he maintained an engaging pace. It's not too fast, it's not too slow. Sometimes he goes fast, sometimes he goes slow, sometimes he goes loud, and so on. All right. And then there's also the beautiful Malala, right? She is the world's youngest Nobel laureate winner, right? So again, she uses powerful storytelling in her speeches. And again, she expresses her thoughts clearly and simply and makes a message for educational. Okay, so this is the part where it's, you can't see, yeah? She makes a message for educational equality easy to follow by people around the world, all right? And then there's Simon Sinek. He's famous for his TED Talk titled Start With Why. You guys can look that up, right? Again, if you actually watch this TED Talk, it's actually a motivational one. Especially for masters and PhD students, sometimes you hit rock bottom and your motivation is low and you don't know why you're in this program in the first place, so this is actually this talk is actually quite a motivational boost. Start with why. Again, here he uses clear language, he uses compelling narratives. Narratives is actually stories, right? And he uses a conversational pace to effectively articulate his idea. So at this point, you can try and reflect on your own presentations. I'm quite sure that you've done a handful of presentations at this point, right? So how's your style? Is it compelling, right? Do you actually leverage on the power of storytelling to make people understand what you're trying to convey, right? Do you actually make things clear and simple, or are you actually the kind who likes to make things look sophisticated so that people will see you as someone sophisticated? You know, there are some people who are like that, where they make it their life's dedication to complicate even simple matters so that they can look sophisticated, but that's pointless. All right, again, like I keep telling you guys, if people are not listening to you, people don't understand you, people do not engage in your presentation, they will not remember anything. And when they don't remember anything, we're just wasting our time, right? So that's that. There are 3 people here which you guys can look up. So let's take a break for our brains here, and let's do a simple activity on simplifying complex information. So again, let's go and head over to Padlet, and let's do this activity really quickly in about like 5-10 minutes. Okay. All right. Okay, so here's my Padlet. Okay, so if you look at column number 1, 2, 3, articulation activity, the 3rd column, right? So let's try and practice simplifying complex information. So I have like 3 texts here, and these texts are actually from my field in educational neuroscience, right? Talking about neurodivergent children. So I have 3 texts here. Now you feel free to choose one, all right, one of the complex academic texts below without and try and simplify it without losing its essential meaning. Now again, the keyword here is clarity and simplicity, being clear and being simple, all right? So the goal here is effective communication and not trying to look smart, all right? You will look smart automatically if you can actually make people understand a new information once they listen to your presentation, even though it's for just 5 minutes, but they've learned something new, you know, they remember it, they will see you as smart, right? Without having to sound smart. All right, so go ahead and look at these 3 texts and feel free to actually try and simplify it if you can, okay? So I'm gonna give you guys like about 5-6 minutes to do this. It's actually not long. So try and simplify it in like 2 or 3 sentences, but you have rephrased them to become simpler sentences, and I'll try and share one with you afterwards. So go ahead and do this. I'm going to share the Padlet link again, all right? So because the link in the screen is actually quite long. So let me go ahead and type this in the chat box, okay? Because we will be using Padlet the whole day, and no, not the whole day, but the entire session. HTTPS. Oops. All right, so I've shared the Padlet link in the chat box, okay? All right, so I'm seeing some responses already. So an anonymous posted, you can actually put your names if you want to, okay? You don't have to be anonymous. So I'm quite sure that this one refers to, wait, individuals, okay, hold on. So this one actually might have this one refers to this one. So if you guys, let's read this one, and it's something that you normally see in research articles. It's something that you normally see in textbooks, which again to me is kind of like pointless, right? When you actually write something so long-winded, but it could have been articulated in a much simpler manner. So here, the positive manifolds of correlations among different cognitive tasks, which reflects the fact that a person who does well on one cognitive task tends to do well on others, is a foundational phenomenon in cognitive psychology, but the mechanism underlying this manifold remains elusive, right? So it's kind of like long-winded, and you would have actually lost your train of thoughts halfway through already, right? Like, what on earth is this text talking about? So, but if you actually look into it and you try and simplify it, like the first response says here, the positive correlation among cognitive tasks where success in one task often indicates success in others is a key aspect of cognitive psychology. However, the exact mechanism behind this correlation remains clear, right? So isn't that something that's much easier to follow, right? Okay, hold on. And then, well, if you were to actually give this, if you were to actually simplify that information in the form of a PowerPoint slide, right? Perhaps you can say something like, doing well on one brain task usually means you will do well on others too. This common pattern in brain studies is well known, but the reasons why it happens are not clear yet. So it's just as simple as that, right? So all that text wanted to tell you is that if you actually do well in one certain brain test, you know, you will highly likely do better in another one. And that actually tells you that, you know, there are associations between being able to do good in this one, you might also do good in this one. But why this happens, you know, is still not clear yet in cognitive psychology in my area. Okay, we can come back to this if we have more time. So let's move on to our next section. Okay. All right, because it's already like 10:45 and we only have like 1 hour and 15 minutes left. Okay, let's move on. Sharing. Okay. Okay, all right, so now we move on to the second section of the training, talking about presentation tools. All right, most of you might tell me that what PowerPoint, Google Slides, Prezi, these are kind of like old school, you know. Things are not old school if they are still workable, if they are still efficient enough, you know, if they actually still do the job for you. So believe it or not, you know, decades and decades later, right, PowerPoint is still a top learning tool. especially in the field of education and training, you see. So people like me, you know, even though my area is in educational psychology, but we will follow closely whatever digital tools, especially that's available for learners and for educators. And we will normally check on like which one is actually not working anymore, which one is actually already obsolete, and so on. So believe it or not, you know, this is kind of like a billboard for learning tools. Something like when you grew up, you know, we used to have like song charts, right? Like Billboard top 100 songs for 2000, for year 2003, 2005, something like that. So in the learning, you know, in education, we also have like a chart, like what's the top 100 learning tools for this year. So PowerPoint is actually still number 2 in the top 100 learning tools for 2022, you see? But you will say that, but it's kind of like boring. It's kind of like cliche and so on. The thing here is that what makes a PowerPoint boring is actually us. It's not the tool, you know. The whole point of a PowerPoint is to actually deliver powerful points, but we oftentimes decide on our own accord to actually just copy and paste whatever that's in the textbook, and we just kind of like put and slap it on the slides. And whereas when some of my students would actually just like, you know, snip using the snipping tool, and then we'll just slap it onto the presentation slides, and then in class they will just kind of like read it, you know, like not presenting but like really reading it. Now you have to understand that when you actually read from the slides, you are not presenting, you are not communicating. In fact, you are not even reading, because reading literacy actually means that you're reading and there is some level of understanding. But if you're reading and you don't even process anything, like you're not even understanding what you're reading, that's not reading. That is barking at print. You're just barking at the print. You know, it's like, and I hate to say this, but it's like most Muslims where they read the Quran and they boast that they have finished reading 30 chapters of the Quran in just 1 week and so on. That's not reading to me. You know, reading involves a certain level of understanding of what you're reading. So if you're actually reading the Quran and you finish like in a week, and also of all the you know, the 30 chapters, but you don't understand a thing, that's not reading, that's just barking at print. All right. So most of the time, you know, I'm not saying that people present here today, but some people actually, you know, only slap things into the PowerPoint and they start barking at print. And worse, when they actually turn their backs and actually look at the, you know, at the screen, and then all we're looking at during the entire time is their back. You know, so again, that's not presenting, that's not even communicating. You know, communicating is you talking to me, whether it's like one-to-one, you know, physical, or if it's actually online, we are actually exchanging information. You're trying to make sense of what I'm saying, you know, and so on. All right. Number 2 is Google Slides. This is kind of like a baby version of PowerPoint, but the good thing about this is that because it's internet-based and it comes with Google, right? You can actually have real-time collaboration and you can actually easily share. But the downside to this is if you don't have stable internet connection, then during your presentation, you will somehow jeopardize you know, getting stuck and things like that when your slides cannot move forward because of no internet connection. So that's a bit, you know, that's the tricky part. All right. And then the next one would be Prezi. All right. This has been around like for quite some time already, I think for more than a decade. So Prezi, for those of you who are familiar, right? It can go like animation and here and there. You click here, it zooms in, and then it kind of like zooms out, and then it goes here and it goes there. I remembered way back in 2010. Now 2010 is like 13 years ago, right? I was in one of my master's class, and one of my professors got really pissed off when one of my classmates actually tried to show off his Prezi skills. And then, you know, the professor said that, you know, I'm just kind of like being dizzy, like as if I'm going to a roller coaster, like zooming in and zooming out, going here and going there. And I'm just like too dizzy to even pay attention to what you're talking about. So I meant to say, you know, you need to, again, if you have clear thoughts, if you have a clear storyline of what you want to deliver, then by all means use Prezi and make sure that the animations is actually clear. But if you're the kind where you're such a maximalist, you want to put everything in there, so it's that kind of like bringing your audience into a very dizzy and giddy roller coaster ride, zooming here, zooming there. But the best part is that it's non-linear. Like you can like a PowerPoint is like linear, right? From one slide to another slide to another slide. But Prezi is where you can actually click here and you can go to this side and that side, this section and that section, wherever you please, right? So it's dynamic, it's engaging, right? But again, your thoughts needs to be clear. You need to have a clear storyline, and it cannot be like so full of information at a single time that people can get a cognitive overload, all right? Okay. So tips for using tools effectively, again, so the idea here, the recurring idea here is that keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. Too much of information on a slide can be overwhelming, so always stick to key points. The problem here is that we do not prepare enough. We do not understand our material enough. We do not master our subject matter enough to be able to come up with simple points. We normally want to put everything in the slides because we want to read it during the presentation. And that is a clear indication that you are underprepared and you don't really truly master the material, right? So that's why a PowerPoint is like powerful points, right? And then use visuals to support your message, but the visuals need to be something that is relevant. So right now, you don't see anything much in this particular slide, right? But if I were to put like butterflies, back in the days when I was in my 20s, there was a lot of all these GIFs. So there's butterflies and then there's sparkling rainbows and suddenly there's a unicorn galloping, at the bottom of the slides. Those are not necessary, because yes, that's going to capture people's attention. But then, the unicorn dancing around underneath your slides, will actually make people's minds wander around too. Like they will remember their childhood about My Little Pony and things like that and so on. And where did that My Little Pony go? So, it captures people's attention, but then people's minds will wander off. Because it's distracting and it's not relevant to your presentation, right? Number 2, use high quality visuals. Quality images, infographics, diagrams can enhance understanding and make your presentation more engaging. Now, the key word here is that they need to be relevant. If you look at some people's species, right? Again, these are maximalist people, and most of the time, maximalist tends to be female. I don't intend to be sexist, but most of the time, as females and as girls, you tend to want to cover all your bases. So you would put like in your thesis, most of the time you have graphs for every single little outcome, right? For every single results, you will have like this graph, that graph. And in fact, for one descriptive analysis, you might have like a bar graph, a pie chart and so on, when it's actually not necessary. Only use visuals, charts, bar graphs or whatever it is when it aids understanding, when it's better to have it visually instead of writing it in a long-winded paragraph, then you might as well have it in a visual form, right? But if it's better, how about I just present the table, says Shinyi. Presenting the table is good. If this is an oral presentation, presenting the table is good, right? If you can actually aid it with your oral explanation. But in a thesis itself, you cannot just kind of like slap the table, now read it on your own and just understand it on your own. No, that's not how things work. But there are some times when written text is already enough. It does not need to have a visual representation of that particular result. So again, you know your work better, and you know that when you read this part, and then you would say, oh, I think it's better to have a visual representation of this thing. But visual representations does not have to accompany every single little outcome. Okay, and then consistent design. Now, this is a bit of educational technology. I'm not an educational technologist, but what I do understand is that when it comes to appealing, engaging, and pleasing aesthetics, right, you need to stick to a design. And most often than not, us Asians, we tend to fail in this department so miserably. I don't know why. Maybe it's the colonial mindset that more is better, you know, having a bigger car, a bigger house, a higher degrees, you know, that incultured belief makes us think that the merrier the better, you know, the light, you know, the more colors the better. So oftentimes you will see that, you know, whether you're a Malay, Chinese, Indian, Malaysians typically, we struggle with minimalism. We struggle, it's like, why choose white paint when I can actually have pink, yellow, blue, and it's the same price? White is too basic, for example, you see. And that's when you want like a Scandinavian house like IKEA and so on, right? But you cannot fight the urge to want to become a maximalist. Why do I need to settle for simple if I can actually have a lot more? So again, the principle of design is consistency. So oftentimes we want to actually, let's say in terms of design, these days, I'm talking to you guys because most of you are adults, right? Masters and PhD students, and most of you might already have houses of your own, right? So you're decorating your house and you see all these things on Pinterest, Instagram, and you want to have like, oh, I want to have a Scandinavian house. But the moment you step into a paint shop, you will actually try and get, oh, red, or this pink is nice, or this yellow is nice, or this green is nice. It's not consistent. At the end of the day, you will not have your Scandinavian home, right? Because you did not stick to the design language. So the same goes to effective communication, you know, effective presentation. One slide you're using like red and grayish, dark gray, and then the next slide you're going to use yellow and blue and green and purple too, you know. And then the next one you're going to use like I don't know what. So the design is inconsistent. It's even crazier when you use like so many different fonts, right? So even in fashion, people say that you need to use no more than 3 colors at a single time. So the colors need to be complementary, and you need to make sure that no more than 3 colors, otherwise it's like a walking rainbow of some sort. So consistent design, if you want to create a seamless, impactful, powerful presentation, right? And then the fourth one would be interactivity. So interactivity is the engagement part. So if I can boil down effective communication, I'm not using any theories here. I'm just speaking from personal experience. Effective communication goes down to making sure that people understand what you're trying to deliver, making sure that people are engaged in what you are delivering, right? Like you guys are hopefully still paying attention to me because there's about 69 of us, and hopefully like at least 50 of you are still paying attention, engagement, right? And the third one is retention. It is meaningless if people are excited about your presentation, people were engaged, right? Oh yeah, and you did Kahoot and so on, you did Mentimeter or whatever it is, you know, people are so engaged and so hyped. But after your presentation, they were not able to understand anything. And I mean, they were not able to remember anything. There was no retention, and that's not right either. All right. So that's pointless too. So again, making sure that people understand, making sure that people are engaged, and most importantly, making people actually remember the takeaway messages from your presentation, right? And that is why interactivity is very, very important. So you might want to use features that increase engagement, like embedding videos, polls, and Q&A segments. So there's a lot of tools. I have actually in the Padlet, all right, I have actually shared the link to the top 100 learning tools, right? And if you look at those learning tools, you will actually see that all those tools actually help graduate students, especially, and people who are already in the workplace, right, on how to create powerful, engaging presentation. So the base here, you know, the platform that you want to use would be PowerPoint, Prezi, or Google Slides. But as you deliver that presentation, like what I'm doing right now, you might want to make it interactive, right? By maybe using polls. You can use Mentimeter, right? You can use Q&A segments. There's this cool website called Gather Town. So Gather Town is where if you're working in small groups, for example, right, you can gather in a virtual town, and then there are, like, let's say you gather in a cafe, and then there are multiple rooms in that cafe. So you know, I can talk to Abdul Samad in this group, for example. I'm going to talk to Shin Yi in another group. So I'm going to exit this room, and then I'm just going to go and walk into the next room and have coffee, virtual coffee, and talk. So as you talk in that group, in that cafe, in that small room, the others cannot listen unless you go into the common room and things like that. So you can actually use all those things. There's a lot of those things. I've seen that, you know, with the pandemic, people beyond education started using Kahoot. So I'm seeing like Kahoot everywhere, that it becomes like a, you know, like most of us cannot even stand the Kahoot music anymore, so much so that it became a meme, right? It became a TikTok meme. So again, make sure that it's interactive, but almost always remember to keep it simple and to not overdo things. Okay. All right. I know that some of you actually asking me questions and feedback and providing feedback and so on in the chat box. So I will try and you know, address them as we go along. So because I'm actually from education, and I'm actually from cognitive the psychology, like education neuroscience, I really care about how the brain works, right? How the brain processes information. So it's been a while now, and it's actually 11 o'clock. So let's kind of like pause and take a 10 minutes break right now. So treat this as a white space in your brain to kind of like let loose for a bit, even though the materials is not like heavy, right? So feel free to stretch, hydrate, and check in on the outside world, or check in on your social media, whatever it is. All right. But remember, much like a good presentation, timing is everything. So let's convene in 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll start a timer on my my phone, and then we'll try and reconvene in 10 minutes, and I'll try and address the questions as we go along, as we take a break. Okay, so feel free to disconnect for a while. Okay, everyone. So it's already 11:14. We only have like about 45 more minutes left, right? A good presentation is one where we start on time and we try and make sure that we finish on time as well. No matter how much engaging it is, it's always a good idea to make sure that we finish on time so that you end with a powerful note instead of being very draggy, right? So I would almost always try and make sure that we finish on time. So let's move on. We're still talking about about presentations, right? And the power of language in presentations. I know that some of you from the hard sciences, you might say that, I'm not a language person. I'm introvert some more. I'm shy some more, and I just don't communicate well. But here's the thing, we are humans, and language is actually our thinking tool, and language is our survival tool. How we exist and how we survive all the way until today is thanks to the languages that we speak, so it's actually more than just communicating. It's actually a means for you to actually get things and not get things in life, right? So there's the power in language when preparing and delivering your presentation. So I like to keep things simple, right? So I'm just going to share like 3 things that you can remember. Number 1 is simplicity. Make sure. So again, I think this is like the 3rd thing that we're doing, and it keeps on the repeating pattern here is that keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. When you keep it simple, it does not mean that you are trying to sound stupid, all right? Or you are trying to.
It's from the night guy. I don't know where.
It's not that you are trying to sound stupid or you are trying to undermine your work, right? Into like very basic information. It's not that, a good presentation, good communication is when you can actually boil down sophisticated, complicated ideas in a more simplified manner. Right? You can still sound sophisticated and complicated and complex, doing big stuffs in physics and chemistry and all these data science and so on. But how exactly can you convey that in a more simpler manner without all the extraneous information? So most of the time, I normally would ask myself the big question. What is it that I want out of this presentation? What is absolutely non-negotiable for my audience to know? All right. So make sure that those are the ones that you highlight first, right? Because attention span is very limited these days, right? So make sure that that goes in first, that big powerful chunk goes in first. And then there would also be information that would be nice to have. But if you don't have time, then that it's okay for you not to have them. So make sure that you actually prioritize the order of your presentation. Which ones is an absolutely non-negotiable one? Which one is like must-haves? Which ones is like nice to have, but it's okay if it's not really there, and so on. Okay, so use simple, clear language to ensure your audience can follow along. This is especially important for audiences who are not familiar with the subject matter. So again, a good communicator, a person who is good at pitching, someone who is good at making sales, right, is when you can actually make people who are beyond your field, understand you and follow you. So if you look at a lot of successful business men, right, it's not really the product that they're selling, it's the idea of the products that they're selling. So most of the time you buy things is not really because that thing is really of superior quality, but it's really how that thing has been communicated to you, powerful advertisements, repetitive, powerful, engaging advertisements, and so on. It captures your attention, and it appeals to your emotional part. The moment your emotion, the emotions is activated, your higher order thinking will actually, it concedes and emotion starts to take reign. And most of the time, we normally use our emotional brain to make decisions, and we will then try and justify it later on. But I'll talk a bit more about that one in a later section in a while. So again, what I'm saying here is that successful people, are actually those who can pitch well, those who can actually make things simple and make people want to take action or make people want to buy stuff and so on. All right. Number 2 is using active voice. I have had people, funnily, well, humans are unique, right? So I have had people who like to address themselves in the third person language. I can understand a teacher, like in the Malay language, right? When they address themselves as cikgu, right? Or a teacher, I'm not sure in other cultures, but that's pretty acceptable. Like I'm cikgu nak pergi tandas or cikgu, whatever, like you address yourself as a teacher. Maybe to a certain extent, like medical doctors, right? Talking to young children, right? But I wouldn't actually expect someone like let's say a professor actually addresses herself as a professor to everyone. Professor wants to go to the bathroom. Okay, professor will ask you to sit here and just read this first. Okay, professor. So some people actually do that, and we've seen a lot in theses, especially, that we like, oftentimes we like to use passive voices. Like the experiment was conducted by the researcher, like you kind of like try and address yourself as a third person, when it would have been more engaging if you actually say, the researcher conducted the experiment, like I conducted the experiment, right? And make sure that it sounds personalized. It's as if you are actually conversing with the other person. You're actually really talking and not reading something randomly from your textbook, right? So it's all about communication. So personalize, use personal pronouns like you, like we, and you create a connection with your audience. So right now, I am genuinely feeling that I am actually talking to about 74 of you, even though I'm literally just talking to my iPad right now. So you need to actually create that connection that someone is really, you're really talking to that other person, all right? So even in physical classrooms, I've seen in my classes, right? Like my students present, it's like they're just like really reading. And I think that they don't even understand what they're reading because you're just like reading out loud and you're not having eye contact. That's not communicating and that's not presenting, and obviously, when you start seeing people playing with their phones, you've lost it. You might as well just say thank you and just go and sit down, All right. So again, simplicity, active voice, and personalize. All right. Next one will be the role of appearance. Here's the thing. People always say, do not judge a book by its cover. We've heard that like countless times, right? But as a psychologist, and you got to trust me on this one, people do judge other people based on how they look, all right? People do judge you by your cover, all right? People do judge you by your appearance, all right? If you actually walk into a Viva session, like a physical Viva session, wearing khaki shorts, all right, and spaghetti strips, all right, and wearing maybe like a Yeezy sandal, like a slipper jamban and like that, rest assured, I think that you might your credibility flies off the window and people are just gonna say that, is she okay, is he okay, and so on. So looks actually do matter. All right, so make sure that you do dress professionally. If you must know, I am actually in my bedroom. I'm scared that the internet connection at my faculty is not stable, so I decided to deliver this training at home, and I'm like literally in my bedroom. But if I were to stand up, I'm actually not like wearing towels or anything down here. I am actually fully dressed. All right, so I am dressing. I dress the way I would normally go to work. So dress professionally and ensure that your attire matches the formality of the occasion. All right. I think my credibility as a trainer for this morning would fly off the window if I were to appear in a batwing kaftan, right? So dress professionally. And I've seen time and time again, I know this sounds like really cliche and intuitive, like why do you need to tell me about dressing professionally? I'm not sure if it's the generation or or what. But I think being professionally dressed is very, the lines have been very blurry these days. You can opt for like a smart casual attire. But I've seen time and time again that students these days just do not know how to actually appear professional, right? So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. And I think you guys have seen or have experienced this yourself. But trust me when I say that, especially when you go to job interviews and so on, or the Viva, you know, things that have big stakes in your life, right? Just make sure that you dress professionally. It won't kill you, all right? When in doubt, it's better to be slightly overdressed than to be underdressed, okay? All right. And then the other thing is that be mindful of colors. Avoid overly bright or distracting colors. I'm not just talking about what you wear, right? Red is a powerful color to wear during a Viva. You know, it creates a winning psychological state. You know, that's why you see that a lot of the teams, the soccer teams that win, would normally be the ones that are red for whatever reason. You know, like red actually means it creates a psychological impact that shows that you're confident and you're powerful and you're credible and things like that, right? But don't be like a walking rainbow. All right. But I'm not just talking about clothes. I'm also talking about your presentation slides, right? A lot of, I mean, there are still some students, you know, that even in a single presentation slides, they will have like all the colors of the rainbow in it, including the neons and the pastels and all of that. So when things are like really bright, you do capture people's attention, but people cannot really like digest what you want them to digest. All right, you're taking their attention away to other things that are not important. Okay, so if you're presenting virtually, talking about the outfit, right? Check how your outfit looks on camera before presentation, especially with the lighting and things like that. You know, if you're wearing like something yellow and then there's a sun out there in the window and you might be lost in the screen and so on. Okay, all right. Now here's the third part, the nonverbal communication. All right, this sounds really like counterintuitive. I mean, this sounds like very intuitive and like there's nothing special. But again, a lot of us, you know, we tend to fail to realize that nonverbal communication is also communication. So even though you have written a powerful thesis, even though you have prepared a powerful presentation to deliver in class and so on, or a powerful proposal to be defended, right? And you've prepared your presentation, right? Well in advance, everything is there. The slides are clean and sleek and so on. But you do not, you know, whatever that's inside can be portrayed on your face and so on. And especially for those people who actually wear the emotions on their sleeves, like whatever that you feel inside, you can actually see it right away. You know, those things are actually communicating to your audience something about you. All right. So number one, this is somewhat lacking among students today, is the idea of maintaining eye contact. All right. So eye contact, you know, I cannot establish eye contact because I cannot see you guys here. But eye contact actually creates a sense of connection and engagement with your audience. It's as if you were really talking to your audience, right? Because the whole point of you doing that presentation is to communicate. And to communicate is to actually maintain eye contact, unless, you know, you were born unique and you have artistic traits where, you know, eye contact is a struggle and a challenge, right? Then if you're not that, you know, you must maintain eye contact. So if you are talking to a person one-to-one, you really must look at the person in the eye. Someone can win arguments, someone can win business deals by only maintaining powerful eye contacts. You know, I normally would, if I want to win something like a deal or something, of course it's not a business deal, I'm not a business person, but I will really look people in the eye. And most people, especially if they are on the wrong side, they are on the underprepared side, you know, they will concede. All right. So eye contact is really powerful. Really look at people in the eye. Now you're going to ask me, what about if like you're you're talking to like 300 people, like what like what I'm doing right now. Like if you guys are like my students in class, how exactly do I maintain eye contact? You have to do like a zigzag kind of thing. Like you look to the left from the far back, and then you look to the right, and then you look to the middle, you look to the right again, the middle left, and then to the right middle, and then to the left, and then to the right, and then you look at the center. That's what you do. And you maintain like pauses when you look at each side. It's not like you go here and here and here and here and here. I mean, that's a bit crazy, right? So it's like as if you're really talking to everyone right back. All right. So, and if you're asking me like, what about virtual? Yeah, virtual has always been crazy. During the early days of the pandemic, I remembered like I took out like an ice cream stick, and then I glued like a paper, and I drew like a puppet, and then I put it like really on my on my computer camera, and I actually like really like a stupid person, I was really like talking to that puppet ice cream stick, because I wanted to maintain eye contact with my students, but it was really silly to do that. I really felt silly, but by and by, I tried to learn to actually, not look like fly over here and there, but online is pretty much a bit challenging. But as much as you can, try and look at the camera. But it's like really funny, because you're just like really talking to a piece of machine, right? Okay, so maintain eye contact. And then number 2 is like use of gestures. Strategic hand gestures can help emphasize key points and add emphasis to your message, all right? Instead of just like not using your hands, all right? Use gestures that feel natural and aligned with your content, but be mindful of avoiding excessive repetitive movements. Like you keep on doing like this, and then like this, I've seen that too. And people will just get like annoyed and like, are you okay? So use gestures whenever that's necessary, but make sure that they are not something that's that actually symbolizes profanity in other cultures and so on. So because some cultures, they actually really talk using their hands. So I don't know, this, whatever, can mean different things in different languages. So be mindful of the gestures that you use, all right? So as not to unnecessarily offend diverse audiences. And then facial expressions, posture, and body language, right? So again, like I said, nonverbal communication is still communication. We can actually see if you're excited or not about your thesis, about what you want to present through your facial expressions. If you look lackluster, and if you look as if you're not motivated with your own study, why would the examiners bother in the first place? They spent nights looking at your thesis, trying to correct it. And then during the Viva day, you're giving like half attitude during your presentation, you're not even trying to communicate to the examiners. You're not even trying to pitch to your examiners to really appreciate the study that you did, and to them, why would they bother, right? And then posture and body language. So facial expressions can convey emotions and reinforce reinforce your message. Smile genuinely to create a positive and approachable atmosphere. I've seen people who overdo this thing, and they talk to you while they're smiling. I think that's stupid and that's silly. I mean, that's people can see if you're fake, this is not like 1920s and so on, so I've had someone who actually talks like, because they consume too much of theoretical knowledge, right? And it's like, like just smiling and talking, and people will have like a very different perception about you altogether. All right, just smile genuinely. Whatever you do, just do something that actually comes genuinely from the heart, right? And then everything will actually take place nicely. And then posture conveys confidence. If you actually slouch, if you actually, like do this and so on. I've actually sat in a Viva session where the candidate was actually answering the questions like this, like yeah. So and that actually, again, people do judge other people from the outside, all right? They don't have access to your mental processes and so on. So they will judge based on what they see non-verbally, all right? So always stand or sit straight with your shoulders back, all right? Which not only exudes confidence, but also aids in voice projection. So if you look at powerful men, I hate to say this, but more successful men in the corporate world, they would normally have like an open figure, you know? That's how they actually project confidence and power. So they would normally like sit with their shoulders broad because they're not scared of anything and confident, and it's like open like this, okay? And then pay attention to your body language, making sure that, I can't even see the slides, making sure that, making sure that it reflects appropriate meaning is what I'm saying, all right? And then vocal variations, okay? So use appropriate intonation, volume, and pausing to add emphasis and convey enthusiasm. I've seen powerful speeches, and I think Barack Obama, Barack Obama, if you can agree with me, I think he's a good public speaker, right? He often uses pauses. So when you pause, and then people would kind of like anticipate, like, what's he gonna say next? What is he gonna say next? You know? So, but like I said, don't be too fake, all right? Because when you're fake, that's when like everything just crumbles. All right? And then modulate your voice to keep the audience engaged. I have had a colleague, all right? I think she's overly enthused like me, like educators are normally like enthusiastic people, we just love teaching. So she yells on the microphone, like from beginning to end in the lectures, So try and modulate your voice and make sure there's a high and then there's a low. So if you can, right, master storytelling skills, it will get you it will help you it will make you go far, right? That is why, like in teacher training programs, one of the essential skills that we teach pre-service teachers is the idea of being able to become a good actor, because teaching is all about communicating, right? It's all about trying to convey hard stuffs into digestible stuffs to these young people, all right? So when you're teaching, you need to be able to know how to perform, how to act, how to engage, and so on. So that's why acting is an essential part of teacher training, all right? But unfortunately, lecturers don't go through rigorous teacher training as school teachers do. So lecturers, they don't all come from education, like people from medicine, people from agriculture and so on. They were actually from the agriculture field and so on. They were not trained to become teachers of agriculture, the lecturers, so they might not master these storytelling skills. But if they do, all these hard sciences would be even more appealing to a lot of people out there. I'm very worried about STEM these days, because there's not a lot of take up by our youngsters, because everybody just wants to sell NFTs and cryptocurrency and so on. Like, we don't want to do the hard stuff, it's boring. So that's why storytelling is powerful and it can go a long way. All right, so let's do one activity, analyzing a presentation activity. So let's move on to Padlet, okay? Let's go back to our Padlet page, and it's here. Okay, so, oh wait, did I skip one activity? Hold on. Let me just like really quickly check on my, wait. Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, I think I skipped one activity. So let's go ahead and look like after articulation, there's the slide improvement activity. All right. wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth column, slide improvement activity. So this one was the one that when I talked about the slide, the presentation just now. So you can see that toptoolsforlearning.com. And if you actually click on that page, right, it will actually take you to this page. And this is like the one that I said about the billboard, like a song billboard, but it's for tools for learning. All right. And you will see that, what do they have here? Let me check. These are the top 100 tools for learning in 2022. Okay, so look at the middle of that diagram. You will see that Google, Excel, Word document, PowerPoint, WordPress, Vimeo, that video making tool, right? Wikipedia and Google Docs, right? Those are still the top learning tools. Now, the thing here is not to be complicated and fancy and sophisticated. The key word here is to be efficient and effective, all right? Whatever means that would be, all right? So you don't have to be like excessively high tech if your audience cannot make, cannot follow you through. So let's say if you're doing a community service, talk to the local or asli people, you don't even have internet, for example, all right? Let's not like do a Kahoot to see whether they actually understand your content and so on, you know? So you really need to gauge on your audience first. But these, these things, although they are learning tools, but you can see that they can actually help you prepare a powerful, punchful presentation. All right, so all these things. So it's actually there in the Padlet. All right, the link is there. All right, guys. So let's do this this activity really quickly. Look here. Enhancing visual presentation, making complex slides simpler. All right. So not trying to public shame anyone here, but this is actually a slide, presentation slide for my applied cognitive psychology class from several weeks back by my master's student. Right? This topic was actually something about problem solving and decision making. It's kind of like one of the last few chapters in cognitive psychology. So the student actually tried to open up her presentation with trying to ask us to think outside the box. And we were like, what on earth is that? Outside the box, like, and then we looked at the slides and it's like, okay. So some students, they, I just don't understand the attitude of some students where they, even at the master's level, they don't even bother to check on their spelling and they would just like spell things the way they pronounce it. So I was like, what is outside the box? So it's actually outside the box. So please do not be lazy. You guys are like masters and PhD scholars. These things are just like, these errors are just like non-negotiable, like typos and so on, all right? So take a moment to look at all of the slides under this column and think about how they could be improved. So consider aspects like simplicity, visual aids, design, consistency, and interactivity, all right? So let's look at this one. This slide is actually about how to make a good first impression. And yet it's like nothing but just like words, all right? If you want people to read, they could have just read it in the textbook or whatever. This is not a PowerPoint slide, all right? There's nothing powerful about all these full sentences, you see? So you could have actually just highlighted the point, be on time, be prepared, take care of your clothes and overall grooming, take into consideration nonverbal communication and, like the colors and so on. It's just too verbose and long-winded. Of course, you would not even care to read it. And most students, right, the presenter would just be reading off the slides. And yet, ironically, it's about how to make a good first impression. All right. I'll walk you guys through this in the interest of time. So number 2, fake minimalism. Some people say, I'm like embracing less is more, less is more, less is more. This is not what less is more looks like. This is just being pure lazy, with all the red underlines and things like that, this is kind of like big minimalism, and it actually just tells people that you are batshit lazy. All right, so let's avoid this at all costs. And then this one, this is when I was doing my undergraduate in UPM like many eons ago, right? Most of the lecturers actually had PowerPoints like this, and we were like, oh, like come on, like. It just keeps flying and here and there, you know, so excessive animations. Again, if things are not relevant to you making a powerful, impactful statement, just delete them at all costs, all right? You can make do without the animations, okay? So even the whale is like, you know, so, and then it's like vanishing and so on. This is absolutely not necessary. It's unnecessary, you know? So use animation sparingly and only if you want it, only if that animation serves a purpose. Okay. All right. Next one, rainbow presentations. I still have a lot of this among my girl students, my master's students, you know. It's pretty, you know, there's baby pink, there's baby blue, there's baby purple, there's sprinkle of gold and so on, you know. But it's unnecessary. So always remember about the design template. And when you think that you're not good with colors, always just use a template color template, all right? And in fact, there are a lot of websites dedicated to suggesting to you like templates, color templates. You can actually just Google like color templates and it will actually suggest to you better gradients than the ones that's that come standard with PowerPoint presentations. All right, so this one is like neon green. Of course, you are actually grabbing my attention with that neon green, but you are also annoying me with that neon green. And then the fact that you actually have the font in yellowish orange, you know, the contrast between the words and the background is not good, you know. It just drives people crazy, yeah. So let's avoid this one also, yeah. And then this one, like what is IoT? And you're talking about IoT, you're talking about Internet of Things, you're from computer science, for example, I would assume. And you're using fonts like as if this is like Shakespeare, you know, like as if this is literature. And what am I supposed to actually look at? And what does this slide actually mean? Even if you're actually going to accompany it with some oral presentation, but it's like everywhere. And do we really still need that clip art? That's kind of like so 90s, right? So let's not have these. So again, powerful, impactful presentations is not about like making things like look too minimal, you know. It's not about being lazy and about being like too simplistic, but it's about clarity and only providing what is actually powerful and impactful and what people really must know. Okay. And that's actually really hard. Like I said, like people trying to adopt a minimalist looking home, but when you walk into the store, you want to buy everything and everything looks nice, right? So it defeats the whole purpose of wanting a minimal home. Okay. All right. Next one is actually the analyzing presentation activity. I think this is the last one. Oh, yay. Okay, so this one, a presentation case activity, observing the art in action. So let's watch this, I would say, a good presentation. I think it's a TED Talk. I like one that's by Tim Urban called something about procrastination. I think I'll share it with you guys in the Padlet later on, but that one's like 15 minutes. It's a bit too long for us to watch together. So let's go ahead and watch this video together because it's just like 3 minutes. And it talks about try something new for 30 days. So it says here, is there something you've always meant to do, wanted to do, but just haven't? I think we all more or less from time to time have this feeling, right? Matt Cox suggests try it for 30 days. This short, light-hearted talk offers a neat way to think about setting and achieving goals. All right. So as we watch, I'd like you to focus on the presenter's language, appearance, body language, and use of visuals. Consider how these elements contribute to the effectiveness of the presentation. all right? And you can post what you observed in the comment section, okay? So let me go ahead and click this and see if
A few years ago, I felt like I was stuck in a rut. So I decided to follow in the footsteps of the great American philosopher, Morgan Spurlock, and try something new for 30 days. The idea is actually pretty simple. Think about something you've always wanted to add to your life and try it for the next 30 days. It turns out 30 days is just about the right amount of time to add a new habit or subtract a habit, like watching the news, from your life. There's a few things that I learned while doing these 30-day challenges. The first was, instead of the months flying by forgotten, the time was much more memorable. This was part of a challenge I did to take a picture every day for a month, and I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing that day. I also noticed that as I started to do more and harder 30-day challenges, my self-confidence grew. I went from desk-dwelling computer nerd to the kind of guy who bikes to work for fun. Even last year, I ended up hiking up Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. I would never have been that adventurous before I started my 30-day challenges. I also figured out that if you really want something badly enough, you can do anything for 30 days. Have you ever wanted to write a novel? Every November, tens of thousands of people try to write their own 50,000-word novel from scratch in 30 days. It turns out, all you have to do is write 1,667 words a day for a month. So I did. By the way, the secret is not to go to sleep until you've written your words for the day. You might be sleep deprived, but you'll finish your novel. Now, is my book the next great American novel? No, I wrote it in a month. It's awful. But for the rest of my life, if I meet John Hodgman at a TED party, I don't have to say, I'm a computer scientist. No, if I want to, I can say, I'm a novelist. So here's one last thing I'd like to mention. I learned that when I made small, sustainable changes, things I could keep doing, they were more likely to stick. There's nothing wrong with big, crazy challenges. In fact, they're a ton of fun, but they're less likely to stick. When I gave up sugar for 30 days, day 31 looked like this. So here's my question to you. What are you waiting for? I guarantee you the next 30 days are going to pass whether you like it or not. So why not think about something you have always wanted to try and give it a shot for the next 30 days? Thanks.
all right. So what do you guys think? All right. Yeah, so again, is in the interest of time, we only have like 8 minutes left. Okay, I'm gonna read out one feedback here. Storytelling, right? Simple slides, good explanation, communicate well with the audience, right? He is actually really talking, and it's not like with excessive high-tech gadgets. And if you look at the pictures, you know, there's nothing like of high photography quality, you know, like there's no art to these pictures and things like that, but it serves a purpose from beginning to end. You know, it serves a purpose, and it somehow did move us, right, to take action. So again, understanding, all right, making us engage all the way until the end, and making us retain information after the presentation has ended. All right, understand, engagement, and making sure that we remember. Okay. So let's move on, I think, to the final part of our session for today. All right. I told you guys that 2 hours is actually just really short. Okay. Now, this is a bit, I wouldn't say that this is technical. This is not even philosophical, but I do want you to somehow remember this, given the fact that I am actually talking to people in academia, right? You guys are masters and PhD students, and maybe some of my lecture colleagues are perhaps also here as part of the audience as well. So I might as well, share with you something for you to take with you throughout your careers and so on, in your Viva, in preparing all future presentations, especially if it's related to an academic discipline, and especially if you would need to actually demonstrate some level of credibility, all right? So this is called mastering rhetoric, all right? So there's part of mastering rhetoric, which rhetoric is actually the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, all right? So one of the key aspects of rhetoric is the use of appeals. Again, at the end of the day, you communicate, either you want people to understand your presentation, like me teaching in class and so on, right? Or you want to win. You want to make sure that you pass your Viva. You want to make sure that you pass your proposal defense so you can proceed to the next stage, or you want to actually secure a research grant if you are a lecturer, right? So how exactly do you win people? You win people by appealing, especially to the heart part. And again, trust me, because I'm a psychologist. All right. So these appeals, there's three things that you have to remember: ethos, logos, and pathos. All right. So what are these things? All right. Ethos is actually establishing credibility. All right. You need to make sure, because people really judge you based on how you look. People do judge a book by its cover. You judge a book by its cover. Right? And sometimes you just buy a book because the cover is nice. All right. It looks nice on your shelf. Right. So you got to make sure that you, your audience, sees credibility in you. And that's why those non-verbal communication matters, how you dress matters and so on. But most importantly, people are more likely to believe and respect your argument when they see you as being someone who's credible. So an example is when you're presenting research, it's important to mention your credentials, expertise. As boring as it sounds, maybe this is why, MCs will actually tell you who the speaker is for today and things like that, so that it's not just some random dude on Instagram that's, some random influencer like giving you a talk as a so-called key opinion leader or something, right? So this helps establish ethos by demonstrating your credibility, okay? Second one is logos, using logic and reason, right? Logic and reason. Logos, I think this is actually a Latin term, so on, like ethos, logos, pathos. I think it's something from philosophy. But enough for you to remember that part of your presentation, communication, pitching, right? You need to also have logic and reason. So logos involves persuading. So remember, these three things is actually you trying to persuade people to believe in you, to remember what you're saying, to actually make you pass your Viva, to make you, to give you that grant money that you need and things like that, right? Or if this is actually for research, or for to establish a startup company and so on. So remember, these three things is actually for you to persuade people to be on your side, right? So logos involves persuading through logic and reason. This could involve providing facts, statistics, or a well-structured argument. I can see, and this is actually quite sad to admit here, that sometimes some people, when I say people, I mean professors, they provide the inaugural talks, and you actually sit there thinking that you will hear facts, right? You learn facts, remember facts from their lifetime's work, and you don't see the facts. Like, you don't see the statistics, or you don't even see any well-structured argument. And you don't know what it is. It's just like stories, but they're not powerful stories that's relevant to their supposed field of work or whatever their finding is. So sometimes, as counterintuitive as this sounds, right? Some people don't even have facts in their presentation. In the wise words of the Malay people, kuat menggoreng, like sembang kari, like something like that. All right. So an example is when arguing for new research method, you might use logos by providing evidence that this method has been successful in a previous method, in a previous research. So in my case, I do a lot of evaluation research. I do a lot of experimental research, but because I work with neurodivergent children, ADHD, ASD, autism, and so on, it's not feasible for us to conduct randomized control trials. You cannot just simply find a bunch of ADHD children and put them in a control group and another bunch into a treatment group, an experimental group. Humans do not work this way, and especially with vulnerable, hard to reach populations like neurodivergent or orang asli children, for example. So I've been proposing like a single case experimental design, but not a lot of people, like for example in medicine, are aware of these designs, and they could be very skeptical, people in the hard sciences. So you make an argument, you make your case, you show the stats, you show, you cover your bases. So you need to have logos as part of your presentation. And then the third one is pathos, appealing to the emotion part of the brain. Emotions are the most powerful one, if you ask me. All right. So pathos involves making an emotional appeal to your audience, and this can make your argument more relatable and compelling. Because we're humans after all, and again, we're wired to remember stories, powerful, engaging, emotional stories, right? So if you're presenting on the impact of educational disparities, for example, if you're like from education, right? So you might use pathos by sharing a personal story or describing the real world effects of these disparities and so on, like gender inequality or refugee children, and so on. All right, so appeal to the emotion. Like, why is this study important? Even though you're talking about zebrafish as animal modeling for other research or whatever it is, or even if you're just talking about diseases of banana plants, how do you actually make it appealing to the emotions of other people? Because you absolutely need this grant, for example, okay? So spotting ethos, logos, and pathos. Wait, I think we can actually skip this one in the interest of time. All right. I can actually post this in the Padlet. So remember, I will always make that Padlet available for an extended time so that you can actually download materials in there and so on. Okay, so let's skip this. And I would just really like to recap because it's already like 1 minute past 12. All right, the takeaway points here. Again, I think I've said this time and time again, clear communication. All right, articulate for impact and ensure your message is understood. That's all that you want to do. You want to be understood. All right. Engage in visuals. All right. Use visual aids to enhance your presentation and captivate your audience, but do not use it excessively. All right. I've had one of my students this semester, they is a group presentation and they actually had 3 Kahoot games in one single presentation. It's mind-blowing. All right. And number 3 is confident delivery. Remember, I said from earlier on, a major submission can turn into a minor submission, the Viva results. A minor can turn into a resubmission, almost failing, because you do not have confidence in what you are delivering. You do not have the energy, the passion, you're not showing it. So when you're not delivering to the best of your ability, it can actually change results. It can actually change very important results as much as your Viva results, all right? So project confidence through nonverbal cues like eye contact and posture, all right? And then compelling persuasion. Remember the 3 things: ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos would be your credibility. Logos is actually facts. There needs to be facts in your presentation, right? And then the third one is pathos. You need to appeal to the emotion. Like how people, when they are in love, when they are madly in love, they would do stupid things, right? That's a real thing. It's actually your amygdala starts to actually hijack your rational brain. So everything else shuts down. So it's the emotional brain that takes reign. And that's why people who are madly in love or people who are overly consumed with anger, emotions, they can do regretful things. So what I'm saying here is that emotion is a very powerful thing in humans. So if you can appeal to people's emotions, the higher order thinking will, will windows shut down and they will do as you say. So that's why powerful advertisements can make people go really broke, because their rational brain has stopped thinking. So try and use that to your advantage, understanding that part of the human self to your advantage, all right? Preparation for success. Practice and preparation are crucial for confident presentations. You cannot just suddenly, appear to be a good presenter. I did not just suddenly, become like very talkative and very confident to speak in front of just a screen like this. I've had my days of struggle in delivering online classes, talking funnily to just a screen and not knowing if my students are actually there sleeping or what, so preparation is key, all right? And then technology advantages. Leverage tools and technology for captivating and impactful presentations. I'm not too technology crazy, but if, in today's day and age, if you do not use technology, you will look obsolete, all right? So make sure that you also leverage on tools, and you don't have to know all the tool, all the tools in the market whatsoever. Just follow that simple website that I gave you every single year and see what's still working, what's not working, so inculcate all those things. And you can always just use the free versions of them. All right. So I think, wait. When my screen is okay, so I'm going to end this session for today, leaving you with this quote: communication is the fuel that powers personal and professional success. So as cliche as today's training session sounds, articulation and presentation skills, trust me, it will, if you hone on these skills, it will make you go far. It can go a long way. Effective communication, articulation and presentation skills can go a long way. It's equally as important as whatever that's written in your thesis. All right. So that is all for today. All right. I can see that there are a lot of, there are several questions in the chat box. All right. I will stay around for a bit to answer these questions after I have passed it to the MC, okay? But for everyone else, if you would want to leave after the MC is done wrapping up, feel free to do so, okay? So I'm gonna pass the floor over back to the MC. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Aini Marina, for your very informative presentation. Well, so Doctor, do you want me to read over the questions for you, or will you be answering the questions later on?
In the interest of time, I can answer this if you're done wrapping up. If there's nothing else, I can just go through these questions really quickly and I can answer them. But what I wanted to say that if anybody is actually rushing to go anywhere, right? If you have any important housekeeping notes to make, Miss Nadia, feel free to do that, and then I'll go ahead and answer the questions. Okay?
Yes. All right. So, well, let me check. Well, I just want to remind everyone before we end our session today. Please fill in the confirmation of attendance form provided in the chat space. That's provided by Miss Haslina Sello. Okay, and apart from that, I think on my part, we have now come to the end of today's seminar. So on behalf of the School of Graduate Studies, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude and indebtedness to Dr. Aini Marina, and also to all participants. So if you have any, if you have any inquiries regarding this seminar, feel free to contact Dr. Aini Marina via the email address that she provided, ainimarina@upm.edu.my. And thanks again, everyone. So if you have any further questions, other than that, you can just stay in the session, okay?
Yeah, sure. I don't have any other commitments until noon, so I can hang around for a bit, okay? So let me go ahead and answer to Munifa. She is asking about presentation methods, right? Does our presentation methods affect the difference of people people's learning sensory. So I think, so this is kind of like my life's mission. Like there's myth busters in medicine, where sometimes people actually sell slimming pills, pills that will actually make you grow taller even though you're 40 years old and things like that. And when you understand basic science, you will actually understand that those are actually myths, right? So in education, there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of learning myths out there, and people in business, they tend to ride over these myths to sell you stuff. So one of the prevailing educational myths or learning myths would be learning styles. I'm quite sure that you've seen this a lot, and people will say, oh, you're an auditory learner, so maybe you need to do this and this and that. And I'm quite sure that a lot of lecturers in other faculties tend to create or generate learning innovations in their respective fields based on the so-called learning style. Now, let me tell you, learning style is actually, it's not a myth, right? You do have a learning style. You do have a learning preference, right? But time and time again, people in my area, when we do research to look whether or not learning styles, right, has an impact on learning outcomes, right? It does not. What does this mean? It means that if you're an auditory learner, if you're a kinesthetic learner, meaning that you're very fidgety, you need to, you need to run around, you need to do something and so on, you need to be slicing something. Or if you're a visual learner, you need to see things, you need to see videos, right? Given the fact that you have a preference for different styles, does that actually affect your learning outcomes if the teacher actually helps you to, give you more visual materials? The answer is no. All right. So what I'm trying to say here is that, now listen to me, learning styles is not a myth, but it does not affect learning outcomes. What this means is that if you are a visual learner, but your teacher actually talks to you and there's no visual output, you can learn equally the same as an auditory learner. Okay, so what is the bottom line then? The bottom line here is that look at the scenario where you are presenting. All right, in a Viva presentation, would it be relevant for you to actually play a 15-minute video and so on, just because you think that this examiner is very auditory, this one is visual, this one is kinesthetic? No, right? What I'm saying here is that, again, learning styles does not affect learning outcomes. People can actually learn in any way. It's just a personality, right? Just as if you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, okay? So it does not affect learning outcomes. So you do not actually need to have the obligatory to actually cater to people's different preferences. You can, but it's not obligatory, all right? And then Aisha Baring asked, while presenting, you realize that your audience are bored and not interested in your topic. How would you keep yourself motivated to finish your presentation well? Now, this is the one that I said that preparation is key. Mastering your content is key, right? When you actually really understand your content, you then would know that how to simplify things. You would then know that how to actually regain people's motivation. The only reason why you need to understand that motivation is actually an internal thing, and you can only see people's motivation based on that engagement. So when you see people playing with their phones, when you see people yawning and so on, you know that they are not engaged and they are not motivated, right? And what that's telling you is that they are no longer following your presentation. You have to understand that all academic disciplines, they are all neutral. There is no one single academic discipline that is more engaging or boring over the other. All of those are neutral. What makes it boring, what makes it exciting, is actually how we actually communicate those areas. My area is actually cognitive psychology, and I actually talk about perceptual processes. I talk about attention span, and this is something that I cannot even show. My colleague who teaches developmental psychology can actually bring students to the kindergarten and see this is what stage, and so on. It's fun, right? And people in vet, right, they can actually show like, oh, these are piglets and they are born to this mother pig, and do you know that piglets only suck milk from the same teat and they do not go to other teats? Those things you can actually see, and it's fun. So what I'm trying to say here is that my field can be boring from the get-go, but it's how you actually storytell that and make things relatable that will make sure that people can sustain their attention. So again, if you find midway that you are losing people's interest, your number one thing that you have to do is, how do you make the content relatable to people? People will only give a damn. People will only listen to you when they think that whatever you want to say is relatable to them. So that's why as teachers, teachers will actually have like a introduction session before they teach students, because they want to gauge the children's attention first. They need to make the teaching relevant. And that's why people hate ad maths back in the days, because they don't know how ad maths relates with their daily lives. And it's like, why do I need to bother about ad maths? Something like that. All right. And then Shini asked about color palette for slides. Does that mean pastel colors for presentation? I did not say that pastels, only pastels, but I do want to highlight, let's avoid neon colors. All right. But pastels, if it's just like, if there are no striking contrasts, that's not a good idea either. You can see that for this slide template, you can see that there's a mixture of pastel and bold colors, but it comes in a color palette, right? So I'm not using like everything under the rainbow. Like there's a lack of greens and so on in this particular slide template. Okay, so the ice cream stick is really good tips. Yeah, it kind of like helps, whatever helps, right? Okay, so I think that is all. And then Iza Najmi says that I can speak Arabic language. The thing is, at the end of the day, you need to know what your goal is and why you're doing that thing or learning that thing in the first place. So same goes to your masters and so on. So when you know what you want to achieve, so you then work towards achieving that goal. So I think that's how I am actually able to be good in certain things, I suppose, right? Because I actually have a goal in Arabic as well. Okay. So I think that is all. Oh, Yoga Malar. Yoga Malar, you're my student, right? Like yoga, right? Okay. So I think that is all. Is there a message from Miss Nadia? Let's see. Anything else, Miss Nadia? Are you still in the meeting? Do you want to? Is there anything else, or can we call it a day already?
Well, before we really end this session, shall we have a photo session, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Everyone turn on their camera. Yeah.
Is it everything good, Miss Nadia?
Hold on. Doctor, can you just stop
Okay.
sharing your screen first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. All right.
All right, everyone. So I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope to see you guys again in a different space, different venue, different topic maybe, right? This isn't exactly my topic or my forte. I'm just sharing whatever I have and based on experience, all right? So I hope to cross paths with you on campus, and I wish you continued success. So let's not be a mediocre, because life is too short to be a mediocre, all right? So all the best with your future presentations. My dua goes to everyone. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So Miss Nadia, I'll be leaving the meeting room, yeah? Okay. Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.